Well, I managed to do this video almost to the end, and my phone went dead. So I'm starting over for you. Um, this is a topic that's been on my sort of been popping up in different ways. It's a thread throughout life that it just affects us on many levels, but many of them it doesn't matter. It's not a key problem. That is, many people have refused or do refuse to uh, accept reality by, and they cling to whatever ideas satisfy them, you emotionally. Uh, and as I said, this happens on all kind of levels. Sometimes it's a problem, sometimes it's not. Some people are clearly delusional. So we've seen people burning Teslas, cars that belong to people who have actually the same worldview and ideas for the most part as the culprits have, uh, and they certainly aren't Mr. Tesla. They're just people who bought Teslas. We bought them when Mr. Tesla was an okay guy. Cool. Now he's not an okay guy, and so we got to burn those cars. Well, that's a sort of delusional worldview. Now, recently I watched a panel, a news panel, a discussion, and where one of the people on the panel, and these were, there's always Republicans and Democrats, etc., on the panel, and one of the people made the comment that he thought that people who were Trump supporters were people who had been watching alternative sources of information and had been brainwashed. Uh, this strikes me as quite silly. I don't think it's all that logical when you think about it. I can't speak for everybody. I can say personally, and you've heard me say this before, that I've shared that I watch the news that supports my reality. Okay. Now, my reality isn't just my personal reality. I know some people out there want to pretend that we all each have our own truth and we each have our own reality. Well, that's poppycock. Okay. Uh, if my car, you can call it a Cadillac. You can see a car and call it a Cadillac. My car is not a Cadillac. My house is not a mansion. You can call it a mansion if you want to. You can use whatever your words are, and that's what unfortunately a lot of these people do. They just use words that become meaningless because they don't use them to mean what a reality is. So they're meaningless words. And but there's a reality that we all share. We're all here on the same earth together. So you know, I'm looking for things that'll support my reality. When I come across something that doesn't support my reality, I've got a couple of options. I can one question my own what I see as reality, and I can one I can agree with it. I can say yes, that's my reality. Two, I can question what I see as reality, and well, it's this other idea reality or not, and that means I need to spend some effort to try to figure out, well, is it viable? Is it realistic? Does it have any uh, value? Occasionally, there are situations where two things can be true at the same time. So, for example, I can watch somebody talking about flat Earth, and they can make comments and show information that are clearly realistic. They can prove a lot of stuff that we've been taught that is just a flat out not true. For example, I think a great one is when I'm over at the ocean and I'm looking out there and I see a boat and I see about half of the boat. Well, all you need is a highly telescopic kind of lens, and you can zoom in on that boat, and that boat's sitting on top of the water. It's not sitting 1/3 into the water the way it looks by the naked eye. So this is not proof the world is round. It's something, and maybe it's an optical illusion. There, all kind of people come up with all kind of equations. And you've seen me probably, if you've watched other of my videos, I'll show you how multiple equations can come up with the same answer. So there's different ways of multiple things being true at the same time without necessarily reflecting the whole of reality. That is, we can see something and experience something that is true on multiple levels. But it doesn't mean that there's not something that's related to that situation that's not true, etc. So anyway, if I can't find what's if I look into something and then sometimes because I know that it's possible for more than one thing to be true at the same time, then I can't come to a conclusion. I just have to leave that up to future people to figure out. We haven't figured it out yet. But I can see bull when I see it. And there's some people that I watch, on the news, watch on the news. Typically, I don't watch a lot of legacy media, I'll call it. Media that I watched for my whole life, thinking they were telling me the truth all the time. And I think they were doing more of it before than they are doing today. But so I don't watch a lot of it. Occasionally I watch ABC, sometimes a little bit of PBS, whatnot. I probably see more legacy news presentations on internet sources that are showing you, comparing things, showing you this is where something is said. So I see plenty of what is said because they're always showing you. This is Cory Booker, for example. I saw him on some sort of panel kind of thing talking. And, I don't need to listen to a lot of Cory Booker anymore because he just talks nonsense. I don't care that he sometimes sounds like he's making sense, but he's always just talking a narrative. I'm just using him as an example. Virtually piles and piles of these people who are in government, they're just speaking narrative. They're not telling us anything. They throw a fact in here and a fact in there, and they bend it, or a statistic, they bend it to mean something that, again, multiple things can be true at the same time, right? So a statistic can be true, but it doesn't necessarily reflect the whole of reality. It's just one little piece of reality that really isn't very informative sometimes. But, I just don't need to, I can listen to somebody like Cory Booker for about 5-10 seconds and I've had enough because it's just the same bunk coming out of his mouth. So we all ingest information that supports our reality. I believe that. All of us do that. Sometimes some of us have a conversion experience. So, maybe we have it because we've got bad parents and, they weren't very good. And we go off and we run into somebody in a cult and the person in the cult is very supportive and kind and understanding and helpful, and so you end up in a cult. That doesn't happen to most people, but I studied that back years ago. Studied things like how people join the Moonies. That was back in the 70s. How do people get involved with the Moonies? But that was just one of many cults. Sometimes I've seen Protestants, examples of people who are Protestant become a Catholic, which I think is sort of interesting. Doesn't make sense to me. Again, this is an example of how we're being led by our emotions and not true logic. We can apply, what people do is we apply logical sounding reasoning for what we're doing. But I think personally, and I've heard people who are, very serious Catholics who used to be a Protestant, and, they're all for having that Pope telling you what to do. They're all for, certainly it's great to be able to do something bad to your neighbor and then go and tell your priest about it and be absolved for it and maybe do some Hail Marys. And that's a pretty handy thing. It gets your guilt off your back, and you don't even have to face your neighbor now. Okay? As a Protestant, I should face my neighbor. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. I should admit my guilt, what I've done to my neighbor, and then ask, yeah, I should repent, right? And ask forgiveness. I might not get it. Don't expect it. Um, so anyway, you can change one religion to another for multiple reasons. But and I, some people just like a Jew is marrying a Catholic, so he changes his religion to Catholicism or vice versa. That's just because, well, it's an emotional reason. You're not serious about your faith, obviously. You're just in love with your spouse, right? Uh, Atheists might turn to a Christian. Sometimes a Christian turns to an atheist, right? Sometimes, probably more likely, a young person rebelling, or we don't get what we want in life. We want life to go a certain way. It doesn't go that way. We blame it on God. Therefore, there can't be a God because God didn't serve you. Okay. Or you have parents who claim to be Christian, but you don't like the way they're treating you, so you decide, well, I want to do my own thing. Uh, I think that I should just say there's no God, and then I don't have to worry about God anymore. And a good example of this, was just the other day, I heard a guy uh, who had been, I think he sounded like he was raised in a Christian family, a family that probably went to church and whatnot. But it seemed like a pretty straight guy in his youth. And then he was in a rock band, and he went off and did albums, and got into whatever you were going to do when you're in the big city making rock albums and wanting to do your own thing. And he decided at that point that atheism just made a lot of sense. So get that God out of the way. And he was happy with that for a good few years until he ran into I assume it was Richard Dawkins. I thought he said Christopher Hitchens, but Hitchens died in 2011, and Dawkins is still going, I think. And the very famous atheist, and he contacted him and said, "Hey, I was looking for you a website for you. You don't have a website. Would you like me to make you one?" And so they got involved with each other. So he was a big sort of a inner circle. I don't know how tight he was, but he was a tight, had a relationship with this leading atheist. We'll say Richard Dawkins. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But after a while, then he ran into the Summer of Love, or they were calling it that, a few years ago up in the Northwest, where people were burning buildings and doing all kind of nasty stuff to neighborhoods. And he actually, I think this was in Portland. I can't remember. It's pretty sure it's Portland. One of the Seattle, Portland, one of them. And he worked. His place of business was in the neighborhood that they were destroying. And, he had an epiphany. These people, although they were atheists like him, man, they weren't what he expected a good atheist to be. And so it made him question what was going on there, and he turned and looked back at the Gospels and ended up becoming a Christian again. He was converted. He saw the light. Okay. Now there's other people who just have red pill experiences. I know I've heard of multiple people who things like 9/11 happened and it opened their eyes. They saw things about 9/11 that just did not make sense when you thought about them logically. And now you can read all kind of things in 9/11. You may or may not believe what a lot of people consider conspiracy theory, but even if you throw out all the conspiracy theories, something doesn't make sense. So I have to agree with these people who that's the point where they got what they call red pilled. That comes from the Matrix. There was a red pill and a blue pill. I think it was a blue pill. And if you took the red pill, then you were going to deal with reality. If you took the other one, you stayed in the Matrix. So they took these people are what they call red pilled. and they see the world differently and started questioning things and a lot of different things. Well, that wasn't me. I watched 9/11 and wow, that was crazy. And I was still suckered about the whole thing. I was suckered about the Iraq War. I was suckered all along. I was suckered for years and years. Then for me, it wasn't it was multiple things happening for me. For me, there's things like, hey, all of a sudden we're having, just a few years ago, there was one attitude about certain moralities, and then all of a sudden we're having the U.S. taxpayer pay for the sex changes of military people. Now, that just to me was a step way too far. I was buying into everything, rationalizing everything, but all of a sudden I'm going, wait a second. Look, if a guy wants to have his sex changed, that's his business, okay? As an American citizen, and forget about a faith, just as an American citizen, a secular person, that's your business, okay? Freedom to do what you want to do. But what are you doing using my taxpayer money for your sex change? That made no sense. There was just no sense. It didn't even make political sense. It was like slapping people in the face. It just slapping. I mean, because I wasn't that conservative, but Lord, what a really conservative person was going to think about that. It just was nonsensical to me. Nonsensical. So that kind of thing started making me go, wait a second, let me start looking at things a different, at a different angle. And then, of course, I've shared about my participation in sustainability stuff, how I was on Mr. Sustainability. I taught courses on sustainability. But I kept having scientists come to our Native Plant Society, different experts coming to Native Plant Society, telling us stuff, and I'd ask them, well, what supports this? Why is this? Why is that? And after multiple people not being able to answer the question and me wanting to find out what the answers to the questions were and going and doing my own research, I found it's just a house of cards. That's all it is. What the whole sustainability thing is all political claptrap. That's what it is. I'm not saying that as a good Christian, I believe we ought to take care of the creation that's created, okay? But I have my responsibility there. Clean water, clean air, etc. But climate change, that's just, how many, it's based on, let's see, is accepted, what do you call it? That's the term, formula, models, accepted models, okay? Well, we can see models for hurricanes, can't we? And they don't show us all, there's piles of models for hurricanes. They show us on your weather, you're going to see about 3, 4, 5 of them, right? And one's going that way, one's going that way, one's going that way. And then they just sort of, one of the models is just like a model, it's the medium model. It's just taking all of them and saying this is about here, okay? You can't live off of models. Models give you an idea. They don't give you reality. They're models. Your model train is a model train. Okay? It's not a real train. Okay. So, and then, so I've mentioned a couple of things. Then there's just doing research, as my research about climate change and yada yada. I was just watching yesterday a video that had the Roland. I'm reading off here. Roland Fryer, an economics professor at the Harvard University, who did a paper on, or book, a research project on police and racial bias, and he states, "I did not like the police. I don't like the police. I went into this expecting, okay, I'm going to do this research, and we're going to pin the police to the wall for their racial bias." And as he did the research, he found that that wasn't true. There was nothing to support racial bias by the police. And he had one set of grad students help him, who was helping him with the research, do the research. He didn't like the outcome. He got another set of them to do it. He did it over and over again. He did his paper. I think it was around, let's say, 100 pages or something, and then his footnotes were like 100 plus pages. It was, you know, around something like that. More footnotes than actual paper. A lot of supporting information. And the fellow people at Harvard said, "Hey, you don't want to publish that." And he said, "Well, I have to publish what's true." And he published it, and he just, he had problems. People came after him. So, but you have to deal with that. That's how you get to reality. That's how you find out what the truth is. That's how you get red-pilled. Now, I don't know whether he's red-pilled or not. Red-pilled people, if you hear that term, are typically people who, have one worldview, and they realize that it just blows up the whole worldview, period. Okay. I would consider myself red-pilled in that effect. I didn't know the term whenever it came up. But anyway, certainly my worldview has changed a lot after realizing what all the wasn't true. And this has continued to happen, and we've had this. It just, as time goes on, more and more people are realizing, hey, there's some things that just are delusional. That used to, we thought, had some rationality to it, and now we realize it's just delusionality. It's not, that makes sense. It's not practical in any way, realistic in any way. So sometimes we can simply can't fathom that there's something negative about people that we care about, people that we love, people that we respect. There's something about them that is not normal, incorrect, evil, whatever the category is. I mean, it could be anything, but it's something that's negative, okay? Let's just keep it as simple as that. There's something that's negative about who they are or what they do. Whether it's criminal or ethical or whatever. And people just can't accept that the people that they love, that there's anything wrong with them. So instead of saying there's something wrong with this person, instead they become an apologist for the person and accept the person. Now, you need to love your neighbor, right? Coming from a Christian background, well, you love your neighbor, but especially if someone is within the body of Christ, you hold them accountable for who they are and what they do. And these people aren't going to hold anybody accountable. They're just flipping. They flip their worldview. And I was in a discussion with some people in a class one time, and this was about an ethical issue, and it was clear that some of the people clearly had flipped their idea about what was ethically correct. They just flipped it. They used to think one thing, now they think the other. Why? Because they couldn't handle a family member being something that they once thought was wrong, but now it's right. Okay, and then there was other people in the group who were saying, well, Uncle Joe, Professor Simpson, Aunt Susie, whatever. I just can't. What about them? That was what they were saying. They were saying, what about them? So they just could not come to grips with dealing with whether this issue was ethical or not. Well, they had decided it must not be unethical because the people they knew did it. That's all there is to it. Now, that's an emotional response. We can look at, there's something, when it's an ethical thing, or especially when it's based on a religious doctrine, then, are you a Muslim or a Christian or a Hindu or whatever you are, or a Jew? Is that the doctrine of your faith? If it is, then you need to hang into your faith. Otherwise, you're not what you say you are. If it's something Jews don't do, then you shouldn't be doing it, right? I don't hold to the Talmud like Jews do, because that's not biblical, but If you're a Jew, you may do things that are Talmudic or against the Talmud. So anyway, for example, so it's not good either way when you base things only on your feelings. Uh, you know, so let's go back to the Tesla thing. So this whole idea of basing things uh, on your feelings. How can somebody burn a Tesla that doesn't belong to that belongs to a third party? I mean, and that's a feeling thing. That's not a rational thing. That anybody, I think that, and I've watched I watch like man on the street or campus man on the campus kind of discussions between multiple people, and it'll just flabbergast me how one person is making a totally sound, reasonable argument on a point, and the other person is just it's just going right by them. They're so stuck with what they think it has to be right. They've been taught this particular way, and the only way you can be stuck there is by attaching an emotion to your thought. You understand? You're stuck on a thought because of your emotions. You're stuck on a worldview because of your emotion, because of your feelings. You're not stuck on it because you thought about it all the way through. Because if you think about it logically, I mean, that's what school debate's about, right? Have a debate, and some person can just run circles around another person who is an illogical person. So anyway, so interesting, just flabbergasting. Now, so is your idea supported by science? That's a rational thing to support. Let's look at the science. But let's look at all the science. Let's look at good science, right? There's things that are said that are scientific that are not scientific, y'all. They're made up. They're not reality. They're theories at best, theories. At the very best, they're theories. And they're not based on any measurable anything. So if you got good science, maybe it's the historical record you need to look at. What is real history? Again, people lie all the time. They don't. You want to believe that the Bible's not a biblical text. It is. Excuse me, not a historical text. There's all kind of stuff that supports the Bible, and I'm not going to. And there are other texts that there's all kind of stuff that expresses just the science, the archaeology, the historical data we have. When you compare that religion's book to the information that's out there archaeologically, historically available, it's clear it's a made-up religion. And there's more than one of those, by the way. Then there's religious doctrine, as I alluded to a minute ago. If you're going to call yourself a Christian or a Jew or whatever, a Muslim, do you follow the doctrine, your religious doctrines? Does it make sense? If you don't want to follow your religious doctrine, then I suggest you go find out what it is, why your religious doctrine is what it is, and whether or not you really believe in your faith at all. The more I've studied different worldviews, the more I feel confident in Christianity. That's for me. So, as I mentioned, this attachment to emotion finds its place on all kind of levels, though. I mean, I've been talking about serious, really problems that sometimes affect family relationships, friends relationships. You know, if they finally they disagree with something, then that can destroy a friendship, etc. But people will do things that are not sensible if you really think about it, in my opinion, because they're being good people. They feel, how do you be a good people? How do you be a good person? What about handing money to a drug addict on the street corner? Is that really being a good person? You may feel good about giving money to the drug addict on the corner, but you're not doing him a whole lot of good. Uh, there was a judge and his wife they just arrested the other day because he's keeping a criminal in his house. He's a gang member, a proposed accused gang member. They're keeping him in. He's in the country illegally. They're keeping him in his house. I'm sure these people thought they were being good. I'm not sure. I assume they're good-hearted people thinking, "Oh, Jose is, he's such a nice guy. He's been saying such nice things. We need to protect him." Well, they don't know everything about him, maybe, or whatnot. I don't know. This will all come out, I'm sure, in a trial in the future. But my point is, people can help criminals because they're being kind and loving. One of my favorite things is the people who stop and wait for sandhill cranes to walk across the road. It's illegal to run over a sandhill crane in Florida, but you shouldn't let them walk across the road in front of you, in my opinion. And why do I have that opinion? Because I'm trying to think logically, and that is, I am sure that there are sandhill cranes that in the dusk of a day, that gray bird walking across a gray road in a gray sky, gray atmosphere. And if mom's driving down the road and Johnny is acting up in the back seat and she's a little distracted, she's not going to see that sandhill crane. I see dead sandhill cranes all the time that have been hit. Sandhill crane needs to learn it needs to stay off the road when there's a car coming. I never stop for a sandhill crane unless it happens to be in the slap dab middle of the road and there's somebody coming on the other lane. I will go around the sandhill crane. I will go close to the sandhill crane to communicate to him or her that, you're not in a good place. I will hold my horn at a sandhill crane to let them know that they're not in a good place. And I'm doing that out of the kindness of my heart. But I'm trying to teach the sandhill crane, don't walk across the road because you're asking for it. A squirrel knows better than that. Okay? There's all kind of animals who will not stay in the road, but that sandhill crane will. It's just amazing. But my point is, there's piles of people who you're driving down the road, there's people in front of you, you're going 30 miles an hour, it seems to be, the traffic is moving, all of a sudden they stop in the middle of nowhere. Why? Because a sandhill crane started to walk. Now that car, and because I've done it many times, I've seen a sandhill crane head for the road, get right up next to the pavement, and I'm still driving right by that sandhill crane. I probably honk at it at that point, give it a little stir, just to teach it, hey, don't come out in the road. But I've been behind people who actually, hey, here comes a sandhill crane. It's 3 feet off the road. It's headed toward the road. It walks like 1 mile. And it's like a doggone, what do you call it, koala. It doesn't move fast typically. And yet they stopped, and then they waited for it to walk across the road. And they're inviting that sandhill crane to die. Now, okay, let me get off my soapbox. I'm sorry, my nose is itching. My point is, as I've said, people are doing that to be kind, good people. So what we have to understand, though, my point is that many people refuse reality and cling to whatever ideas satisfy them emotionally. We can't know the truth without accepting reality. You can't know truth and accept lies. Therefore, I can't ignore reality if I'm going to know the truth, because that's what I want to know. It's what is true. And as I end this video, as I do all my videos, typically, if you want the truth, and I hope you do, then I suggest you pray to the Creator and say, I don't care whatever it is, tell me what the truth is. That was my prayer. Tell me whatever is true. I don't care what it is. Just lead me to the truth. And I'm pretty confident he'll show you. Have a good day.